we are up to the main event, finally. Dun 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 dun. Vayomer Elohim, na'aseh Adam b'tzalmeinu kidmuseinu. V'yirdu b'tgas hayam, u'va'of hashamayim, u'v'abhema, u'v'chol ha'aretz, u'v'chol haremes, harames al ha'aretz. And Elohim said, let us make man, b'tzalmeinu, in our form, or in our image, kidmuseinu, in our likeness. I would maybe say, in our form, in our image. V'yirdu b'tgas hayam, and they will descend. They, plural, Adam, plural, will descend upon the fish of the sea, u'ba'of hashamayim, and upon the birds of the heavens, u'v'abhema u'v'chol ha'aretz, and on the domestic animals, on the animals, the whole earth. It seems to be in the pasuk that they're separate issues. U'v'abhema u'v'chol ha'aretz, u'v'chol haremes, harames al ha'aretz, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Okay, so Elohim now is making man, and there is this statement. Good morning. There's a statement, let us make man. The question is, who is us? And what is the tselem? And what is the demut? Let's see what the Rav Alshech HaKadosh has to say. Okay. Ra'oi laha'ir rishona. First off the bat, it's important to note, Amra, the verse says, Na'aseh Adam, let us make Adam. Lashon Rabim, that's plural. Ro'ei lahayir rishana. First of all, it is important to point out, Amra, when the verse says Na'aseh Adam, Lashon Rabim, that's plural. Number two, Amra, when the verse says B'tzalmeinu, in our form, Kidmuseinu, like our image, Shehem Shnei Dvarim, they are separate issues, right? Two totally different nouns. V'achar כך hu omer, but later on, this is important, I'm going to read you the verse. After the declaration where God says, let us make man, it says, Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam b'tzalmo, and God, or Elohim, created, the verb here is Vayivra, right? In the declaration it was Na'aseh, let us make, let us fashion. And then the pasuk follows, Vayivra Elohim et ha'adam b'tzalmo, and God, indeed, Elohim created the Adam, ha'adam, right? The first verse said Na'aseh Adam. This one says, when it talks about what God did, it says et ha'adam, the man, there's an extra hey there, b'tzalmo, in his image, in his form, b'tzelem Elohim bara'oto, in the form of Elohim, he created him. So why it reiterates, what's the difference between Salmo and B'Tselem Elohim, and yet there is no mention of Demut. Zachar Nekeva bara otam. Is that a different feature, or is that a replacement for the concept of Demut? Okay, so once again, the verse says, the declaration was, let us make man in a Tselem and a Demut, and then it says that God created, Elohim created the man in a Tselem, which also the Tselem Elohim, Zachar Nekeva. Okay. So, B'tzalmeinu kidmutenu is the intent, and yet, right, V'achar kachu omer, the next verse says, Vayivra Elohim et Adam b'tzalmo, just the tzelem, v'lo ne'amar b'dmuto, but there is no reference, in actuality, right, to the expression of a dmut, of an image, just a form, okay? Third, Amro, the verse says, right, when God says, let us make man, and he will be capable of all these actions, it says, V'yirdu, and they will descend, Lashon Rabim. Adam, right, seems to be plural, let us make man, and yet it says, and they will descend, plural. Umehara'ui yomar v'yirdeh. You would expect that it would be appropriate to say, and he will descend, singular, or it will descend, but not they will. So what's this plural, this language of Lashon Rabim? Okay? Because it should have said v'yirdeh lashon yachid, a singular language, ki echad kara'o be'amro na'aseh adam, because it seems to be saying that when God says let us make man, it's referring to an individual. Okay? So let's see. V'hine machmat kushyat elu, because of these questions, echshav haya ma'amar Rabbi Simlai, right? It would occur to us to consider the statement of Rabbi Simlai in Bereshit Rabbah that says, Lahapech Seder HaKatuv. It actually, the Medrash of Rabbi Simlai we will see, seems to be the opposite or the order of the verses. But Amro, when it says, this is the language of the Midrash. Adam nivra me'adama. Me'adama, that a human being, or rather Adam, is created from the earth. V'chava me'adam, and Chava, right, his female counterpart, was fashioned from him. Mikan va'elech, from here and on, bitzalmenu kidmutenu. It is the expression of both tselem, the form, and dmut, the image. Meaning it seems that, according to Rav Simlai, this fulfillment of the intent of Tzalmenu and Kidmutenu was a function of Chava's fashioning, Chava's creation. Okay? And he continues, Ein ish below isha. There is no true ish, right? A male counterpart below isha without his female counterpart. Ve'ein isha below ish, and there is no isha, there's no female counterpart truly without her male counterpart. Ve'ein shneihem below shchina, and they cannot function as counterparts without the shchina. Adkan. That's the language of the Midrash. V'hine dvarav elu yera'u hefech hakatuv. These words seem to be counter to the verse. Ki halo al briat adam harishon yidaber. Our assumption when the verse says that Elokim says, let us make man, it's going on man, or Adam prime. Right?
The two together.
Or alternatively, Adam alone. Meaning, there's we use Adam to refer to humanity, or Ha-Adam, right? We talk about Adam as an entity made up of Zachar and Nekeva, and we talk about Adam as the man of Chava.
Mm-hmm.
So which of these elements are the words addressing the specific, right? So our assumption was, just on Pshat, when it says Na'aseh Adam, we're talking about the Adam prime. So then, how can you explain to me, according to the Medrash of Rav Simlai, that this is actually a statement about let us make an individual creature that's made up of two components of a male form and a female form? Here, let's see. Ki halo al briat adam harishon yidaber. I would assume that the first verse, right, where it says Na'aseh Adam, it's talking about Adam prime without Chava. Ve'ech yomar mitchila Adam nivra, etc. How can he say in the Midrash that initially Adam was created, and then Chava, and then, right, that's a fulfillment of Tzalmenu Kidmutenu. Shemoreh ki lo al Adam yidaber. His assumption here, the premise here, is Adam is the individual male, Adam prime, that was created without Chava, by himself, and that Na'aseh Adam Tzalmenu Kidmutenu should be referring to, our assumption is him. Okay. That's how the Rav Alshech HaKadosh is setting things up. Okay?
But that's in contrast to what we...
Meaning Rav Simlai points out that there are that the issue of Bitzalmenu Kidmutenu is comprised and ultimately fulfilled from Adam and Chava at their later stages of separation. Meaning once you have an Adam and a Chava together, that is the Adam that's being referred to in Na'aseh Adam. And he asks, what do you mean? Na'aseh Adam is talking about Adam. Right? And also and even that's problematic to understand with the pasuk afterwards that talks about Vayivra Elokim et ha'adam b'tzalmo, and it doesn't talk about it. Okay, so okay. Ach shloshet hakushiyot ha'ele hechrichu lakach. Rather, that our three initial questions is what brought Rav Simlai to say what he's saying. Indeed, meaning that's specifically why his formulation is so. V'hu b'ma shenamar b'sefer hazohar, and this is, in other words, what it says in the Zohar HaKadosh, ki amro b'tzalmenu. When it says Tzalmenu in our form, hu sitra didchura, that is the aspect of masculinity, right? The cosmic force of masculinity as expressed in, the cosmic force as expressed in form. That would be Tselem. The Amra, and when it says Bidmutenu, hu dinukva. So you see that Adam over here, when it says Na'aseh Adam, Bitzalmenu, right? Dmutenu, it's referring to a already, not necessarily an individual specimen of humanity, but rather the idea of what humanity is comprised of. That Adam is essentially a union between a man and a woman, which are expressions of masculine and feminine. Okay? So we're already talking about humanity. We're not talking about the individual Adam here. Okay? So when the verse refers to Dmutenu, that's already referencing, right, femininity expressed in woman, which doesn't really appear in our story till Chava. Or as the Gemara says in Baba Batra, this is an amazing Gemara. So Rabbi Benah would go around measuring different burial plots, right? I guess in his days, they were not marked necessarily, and out of concern for Kohanim, he would delineate. He would go around doing. I don't know how archaeological he got, but there was a point where he was in Hebron, v'nichnas l'ma'arat ha'machpelah, and there's a whole story there where he meets Eliezer Eved Avram, and he engages in discussion, and he peers into different ma'arot, v'ra'ah et ha'avot, and he sees Avram and Sarah, Smola tachat roshi, v'yaminu tachat keni, really amazing stuff in there, and he looks, and then he wants to see Yaakov Avinu, and then finally, v'hayarot tzedi kanes pnima lir'ot et Adam. He wanted to peek in and see the granddaddy of Ma. V'amar lo, and he was told from a heavenly voice, Histakalta b'dmut diukani. You have already peered, you have already gazed at the demut, the likeness of diukani, my portrait. B'diukani atzma. In terms of my actual portrait, lo tistakel. That's 1 degree too close. Okay? So now, he saw the avot, and the avot here are characterized as the demut of a diukan, the likeness, right? It's like when you take a Xerox copy and you make a copy of a copy. So diukan is already a portrait. It's not the actual thing, right? It's an image that represents the thing. And then so the demut is 2 steps removed. The diukan is 1 step removed, right? And then the demut is only a demut of the diukan. So, hine ki la'adam karat tzelem Elokim. Adam himself is called tzelem Elohim. V'la'avot, and regarding the avot she'enam rak nimshachim imenu, that the avot are just extracted. They are totza'ah, right, of Adam, right, on a smaller scale, so to speak, right? They're picking up of the image of Adam. So mimeno, since they're nimshachim mimenu, they extend from him. Kara demut, they are a likeness to him. They are domet to him, right? She'inam ele demut salmo shel Adam. They are only a demut of the tzelem of Adam. Ubezeh, and with this idea, gam Chava tikarei demut. If Adam is a demut, then Chava is also a demut. Shehi na'aset mi Adam, because she is a demut also of what she is. She's nimshechet also from Adam. Okay? Shehi na'aset mi Adam. She's fashioned out of Adam, so to speak. Ki hu hadiukan atzmo. And Adam, as this Gemara in Baba Batra said, is the portrait himself. So tzelem Elokim, if Adam is tzelem Elokim, that's what we call diukan of the portrait. Chava is made from him. So to the degree that she extends from him, we'll say she is like him, she is a demut, right? The Chava demut hadiukan, she is a likeness of the portrait, which is Adam himself, which is who? Hatzelem. So he's equating here diukan and tzelem. And according to these words, Yifaresh Rabbi Simlai, we can explain the words of Rabbi Simlai, She'amar hu yitbarach, that God blessed be, he said, Na'aseh Adam, let us make Adam, uferesh echu lashon rabim. And he's explaining now why, through the words of Rabbi Simlai, we can understand why Na'aseh, let us make man, is plural. Why? Who are the members of the team that come together to make Adam? She'omer hu yitbarach, that God blessed be, he is saying, E'esenu b'shutfut Adam v'Chava. I, together with Adam, the individual, and Chava, the individual, will come together to make Adam, meaning humanity. V'zeu b'tzalmeinu. And all of humanity will be in the tzelem of in the form of us 3 partners. Shehu im tzalmeinu. Hu Adam. Meaning, Na'aseh Adam b'tzalmeinu, we will all come together to make Adam b'tzalmeinu. Who are my other teammates? the members that share my tzelem, that are tzelem Elokim, meaning Adam and Adam. Tzelmenu refers to Adam, right? Hu Adam, v'im asher hu kidmutenu, hi ha'isha. And then the added element of Dmutenu refers to Isha, meaning the verse, it turns out now that the verse that declares, let us make Adam b'tzalmenu kidmutenu, is not referring at all to the initial step towards making an Adam Harishon, but rather a declaration that together with Adam and Chava, ultimately we will create a humanity that requires three partners in the creation of humanity. So we kind of got the cart before the horse here. We're not talking at all about Adam and Chava, except that they were going to be incorporated in making something later, which is humanity.
So let us, the us refers to Hashem, Adam, and Chava.
Right, Adam here is referred to as the Tzelem, and the Isha, or Chava, is referred to as the Demut, and together with God, right, the Ish has the Tzelem of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so the reference to Tzalmenu means our image, meaning me and man, right, or Adam, and Kedumutenu, right, is a reference to the Isha, and all three of us together, right, will fashion, meaning the continued generation of humanity will be structured upon these, the mechanics of this teamwork. Okay? Shehu hayidei shlosha shutafin ba'adam, right? This is that humanity is produced through the partnership of these three parties. V'zehu ein ish below isha, ve'ein isha below ish, ve'ein shnehem below shechina. That is why Rav Simlai makes this statement and attaches it to that pasuk, that there is no man without a woman and no woman without a man, and neither of them without a shechina. That's talking about the perpetuation of humanity, right? V'haba'im mishlshtenu, and that which comes, the species that emerges from us three, Yirdu b'gat hayam, plural, they will descend upon the fishes of the ocean. V'alkein amar, and that's why the verse says, v'yirdu, and they will descend, lashon rabim, plural, ki amro, na'aseh adam, because when the verse says, let us make man, eino al adam harishon, that's not talking about Adam prime, rak al hamin, rather on the species ha'atid latzeit mishlosha shutafin, that will ultimately emerge from three partners. Okay? So, big chidush, I would have assumed initially, we all understand that verse to mean, let us make man, right? Like Rashi says, this is a reference to the Malachim, right? That's one way to understand it, that God is very, very diplomatic, and now that he's got, the Famalia Shalmala, he's very sensitive to them, that they should feel that they're contributing to the next step of evolution of creation and the purpose of it all, which is Adam. So he says Naaseh. But here, the Alshech HaKadosh is saying, really, on the level of Drash, this verse is addressing totally just the continued generation of the species of Adam, the species of humanity, and how that's perpetuated and rests upon this idea of the three partners, that you need the transcendent piece from God, and then the other pieces are the elements of Tzelem and Demut that are contributed by masculine and feminine, Ish v'Isha. Okay? Okay. So then we have to follow.
Can you just remind us why we didn't have we only had the Tzalmo then?
Okay. So that's a question on the next pasuk. And this, meaning now that we have this understanding of what the first pasuk is really about, this raises many questions on the second pasuk. So we have to address this. You're absolutely right. Meaning, we noted that the first pasuk in the declaration of intent, it referenced both Tzelem and Demut, and the follow-up is Bria, not Asiya, which is more primal, Bria or Asiya? Asiya is much more. It's all the way on the lowest level, right? It's a level of Masa. It's in the world of Masa, right? And the first verse is saying Naaseh Adam, and we're talking about humanity. But the next verse says Vayivra Elokim, that God created, right? The world of Bria is, right? We said of all the verbs that appear in creation, right? Vayivra, Vayitzer, Vayas, right? Vayomer, right? They all have different levels, right? Vayivra is on a much higher level. So in a way, we're going backwards. So it could be, perhaps, we'll see, that the following verse is now talking about Vayivra, right? It's talking about Adam Harishon, indeed. And that was only B'Tselem, because that was before Chava appeared, right? Here, let's see, let's follow it through, okay? So now that we know that the first verse is addressing later on just the idea of the species, right? Maintaining of the species in plural form, right? And how they're a function of these three partners. V'hu ki achrei amro kol chelkei habruim amra Torah. Now, after we have enumerated or talked about all the various aspects of that which has been created, the Torah says, "Halo yir'u ki hu yitbarach yotzer adam u'minecho began Eden." Meaning, he's posing a question here. He says, we will see that God does this whole process during the 6 days of creation, and then he puts Adam Rishon in Gan Eden, right? Adam prime, right? In Gan Eden. V'im hayazocha, and indeed, if Adam would have maintained merit, haya nishar sham. If it wasn't for that terrible story that happened, he would have stayed securely in Gan Eden for eternity. And if the story would have continued with Adam in a very, very, very small space of real estate, what would have been with all the vast expanse of the rest of the world that God created? What was the point of God making a whole world and not just a little garden?
Good question.
Okay, klalel upratel, all the general creations and all their various details of the entire creation itself, right? That's a much wider field than that tiny little corner of creation called Gan Eden. So what was the purpose of all that? If Adam just would have, why couldn't Gan Eden be a self-sustained little world? That would have been enough. Lazeh Amar, you can't say that the whole universe was just on the contingency that Adam would have been exiled, right? Therefore, the verse is coming to address, first, to say, Ki vayomer Elokim, when God says, Na'aseh Adam, right? What is he concerned about? Even if Adam Rishon would stay in Gan Eden forever, the rest of humanity should be able to explore and transform the rest of the world. I mean, it has relevance for the eternal generations of the human species.
You're suggesting that even if Adam and Chava lived forever and stayed in Gan Eden,
Their kids would have wanted to move out. You know, can you imagine being 85 years old and raising your grandkids and you're still in your daddy Adam's house? You know, he's going to get impatient. He's going to be like, you know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told you, why don't you just put on scuba gear or do Begas Hayam already? I don't want to see you for a month, right? No? Okay, let's see what he says. Okay? That's why the verse itself is coming to address. Da, you should know. Ki vayomer Elokim, when Elokim says, Hinini atid lihishtatef im shnehem, I'm going to partner with Adam and Chava, and together all three of us will make, plural, Adam bishlastenu. We will create a species of Adam, us three. Ve'emi etchaber, who am I going to hang out with personally? Halohu b'tzalmeinu, shehem Adam v'Chava. I'm going to hang out in Gan Eden with the individuals Adam and Chava. Ve'habayim mishlastenu, and that which emerges from us three, Yudu b'chol hanivra. They're the ones that are going to go into the sea and to conquer all the various terrain of the universe and make it their domain and express their dominion.
can you say that again in your words?
Oh, that were my words. Those were my words. I said that, here, I'm going to read the line. Da, you should know, Ki vayomer Elohim, when the verse says that Elohim said, Na'aseh Adam, let us make man. Hinini, what that means is, behold, I, atid, in the future, regarding the future, lihishtatef im shneim, I will partner together with these two beings, Adam and Chava, right? In order that, v'na'aseh Adam, we will make a species called Adam, bishlastenu, with us three, v'imi etchaber, then who am I going to hang out with? Meaning, who are the characters of humanity that I will have a personal relationship with? Who's going to stick around in Gan Eden with me? Hello, who are those? The Bitzalmenu Kidmutenu. Who's that? Shehem Adam v'Chava. V'habayim Mishlastenu. That which emerges from us three, meaning the species, Yirdu b'chol hanivra. They're the ones that will descend into the oceans and terraform the rest of the earth and express their dominion over all the territory and all the creation.
It's revolutionary.
Huh?
It's revolutionary, this idea.
In what way?
I've never heard of such an idea.
Well, how did you understand the pasuk without this? God says, "Let us make man, and it will be in our form and our image, and they will descend into the waters and go and they'll show dominion over the animals and the fish and the birds." How do we understand that? Just shot.
That Adam and Eve would go down.
When did that ever happen? Obviously, it's talking about all of humanity, right?
Yeah.
For the future too. Meaning, it's a power that's invested within the creation of man. That God says, "I want man to be able to be not just custodian over my creation, but to express dominion over it." Right? And then it's followed with a blessing. And we know that it's plural, right? And there's no mention of Chava here at all. There's no mention of Adam as male and female separate. It's just a general Adam.
But what's revolution is this idea that you'd have Adam and Chava in Gan Eden, and separate to them would be their generations of humanity that will go outside in the world.
So I don't know how revolutionary it is. I think it's rather nobody ever thinks about it. But if you would just stop and think, it makes a lot of sense, because you have two basic questions. What's the point of empowering man to do all those things? And yet, Adam and Chava, were they supposed to stay in Gan Eden forever? Like, I would assume yes. So how do you subtract the difference? This is the most simplest way to do it. It's just like, I never thought of it before because I never had those two questions of how to understand these psukim. What are the distinctions? You know, instead of being very nebulous, you can have statements that could talk about maybe Adam as comprised of Adam and Chava, or maybe it meant Adam, you know, there's different midrashim, how it started, if they were back to back, etc. Is it talking, where's the import of the future of humanity in this prophecy? So all those things, he's helping us parse it out. But I think in the end, this is the most rational, logical thing that we would have come up with just by posing the question. But we never asked that. Meaning we never asked, what would have happened if Adam never sinned?
Right.
Then what would have been with the rest of creation? I mean, it's, right? So he's really helping us think it through.
Right.
Okay, but it goes on. I want to note that this is a long piece, so it's important to choose a good point to pause, but we're going to do some more for the meantime. Okay, but we're going to be, at whatever point we stop today, it will be in the middle. Okay, so now that we have this, we've established and understood the first verse, right, as a reference to all of humanity, and we still didn't even talk about the personal story of the creation of the being called Adam Prime, or Adam and Chava, right? B'Shema Tomar, maybe you'll say, Hechan hem elu shebara tchila, she'achar kach mitchaber itam. Where are these, any mention of these two individuals that God initially created before humanity, that afterwards he would engage with them in a personal relationship? Halohu, that must be what is referred to. Ki, the next verse says, Vayivra, and God created, right? Vayivra Elokim et ha'adam, the man, with a he, Bitsalmo, in his form. But it never says demut. That must be a reference to Adam Prime. That's why it never mentions the demut. Ki Adam atzmo, Adam Harishon himself, lo nivra rak b'tzelem. He was only created with tzelem. He didn't have, even if you learn that it was comprised of him and Chava back to back, it did not express the ability yet of demutenu, of nekeva. Ki lo ba meisha. Gam kavanat ha'inyan, also the intent is lahasir to'ah meish shogeh. The verse is very careful here to disabuse us of a mistake that we might make. Pen yomar ki mitchila, lest one say to themselves, lest one err and say, ki mitchila ratza yitbarach livra anashim bli shituf zachar nekeva. Maybe, you know what? Initially, God wanted to create a humanity without the partnership of men and women, meaning the idea of sexual reproduction itself as a feature of the generation of humanity, that we have to be made up of Zachar and Nekeva, and that, right, perhaps maybe God's intent was initially to make just a race of androgynous beings. Ve'achar kach, and only afterwards, once their creation was already off the ground, nishtana da'ato, he changed his mind, and ultimately it was expressed as bifurcated masculine and feminine, Zachar and Nekeva, Adam and Chava, lest a person think that by understanding the verses as such, because the first verse, right, doesn't say Zachar and Nekeva, it just says Tzelem Demut, and it's plural, talking about humanity, right? And only later on it says what God made, Adam Rishon, there was a Zachar and Nekeva. So maybe a person would think that that wasn't the initial intent. So V'chalila la'el mishinui, right? Heaven forfend that we entertain that God changed his mind. Ki ein atid ne'ala mimeno. There is nothing, no future that is hidden from him. Al kain hikdim yitbarach. Therefore, God initiated terem yivra Adam yitzir kapav, before he actually created Adam Harishon, the making of his hands. Before he did that, he stated, "Du'u, you should know, ki na'aseh Adam b'tzalmeinu. Ultimately, we will make a humanity, a species, made up of Zachar and Nekeva. B'tzalmeinu, b'shituf tzalmeinu she'aseh, with the incorporation of the form, our form that I will make, meaning masculine. Im shituf ishto, and together with the partnership of his wife, shehi kidmutenu, Vehechan hu tzalmenu. Oh, where is this element of tzalmenu? Let's make Adam Arishon, which is the tzelem. Halohu ki vayivra b'tzalmo bilvad. Okay, that's the next statement, that God made Adam Harishon, who was only an expression of the tzelem. Is this clear? So once again, the Alshech is noting that the reason why it's out of order is that it was important for God to state that his intent ultimately, even though, right, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Right, Adam Harishon is a humanity that ultimately will be born from parents, but the first ones are not born from parents. So if God started off telling us the story of how they were created, I might think, right, that the intent was not for sexual reproduction. So God says first, regarding the species of humanity, they will be incorporated, they will be made through an incorporation of these three partners, me and my tzelem and my dmut, meaning a zachar and a nekeva. Now, where is that zachar? The next pasuk reports that God created only the Adam part initially, which is the tzelem, which is the Adam prime.
Could you just remind us how did he?
Tzelem is, I would say, form, which here we're referring to as the masculine element of humanity, meaning Adam, and kidmutenu, likeness, demut, is Isha, is Chava, is the Nekeva. Yeah, what were you asking?
I was asking how could you remind us how does he relate the Tzelmenu to masculine and the Motenu to feminine? What is his?
He hasn't defined why, but he has equated the two. He's equated the two through the words of Rav Simlai, who points out that Tzalmenu Udmutenu is Ish and Isha, which he brings from the Zohar is Zachar and Nekeva.
There's nothing in the definition of Tzalmenu that
No, that's
relates to
for
masculine.
us. He does well. Obviously, there is. But he doesn't. He has not expressed that yet. He has not explained that to us.
Okay.
You know, but we are invited to think why tselem is a term that captures specifically an aspect of God which is masculine,
Right.
and demut is an aspect of God which is feminine, or would be expressed as an aspect which is feminine. Right. There is meaning. There's much more here where he develops, and it's not just in this essay, but in others. He's going to say that he's going to pick up on a lot of these things, and absolutely, it has to be addressed.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Should we do one more little? Okay. O shi'ur hakatuf. Or, alternatively, right, we'll point out that the verse is saying like this: Vayomer Elohim, and Elohim said, Na'aseh, let us make, right? Lashon Rabim, plural. Umatai amar kach. When did God say this? Achar, after Shevayivra kvar et Adam betzalmo. So really, he's saying, right, once again, why are the psukim out of order? If the first pasuk Na'aseh Adam betzalmenu kidmusenu is talking about, right, the species, right, shalosh shutafim right, be'adam, right. So then we're talking about the humanity, and only afterwards, Vayivra is talking about Adam Arishon, right? Why is it out of order, right? So Acha shevayivra kvar et Adam betzalmo, after HaKadosh Baruch Hu already created Adam prime, which is an expression of tzelem, shehu achshav Adam me'adama, which is a reference to Adam Arishon, who is made from the earth. Mikan ve'elech, from here and on, right? Ve'al kain b'hivalech, meaning from here on end, humanity will be tzelem edmut, and that's why ve'al kain b'hivalech shet, when Shes was born, Ne'amar, the pasuk says, vayoled bidmuso kitzalmo, that Shes was born in God's demus, rather Adam over there. It says in the demus of Adam, in the tzelem of Adam. The demuso in his demus, in his tzelem.
So how do we understand
He was the
that
first one who was born of man and woman together. Well, not the first. I mean, Cain and Hevel were,
right.
but we make a distinction between Cain and Hevel and Shes. One could say that Shes was the first one who was born out of Gan Eden, also, right? And he was born of Adam and Chava. By the way, the pasuk I believe says over there by Shes that Adam knew his wife. I don't know of anywhere else in the Chumash where it says that you could have, when it's describing two characters becoming intimate, that it says Vayeda, and they knew each other more than once. Usually it's the first time. And you have by Adam, by Cain and Hevel, and you have it by Shes. Mm-hmm. And Adam and Cain and Hevel, right, according to at least some Midrashim, were in Gan Eden. Right? It says, right? So Shes, it's since it says that Adam knew his wife, right? I believe it says by Shes, Vayeda Adam Schava Ishto, right? So meaning we could look at Shes as an example, right? He's not the first human being, but he, in a way, we're addressing humanity again from start with Shes, and it describes over there that he was made Bitsalmo Bitmuso, which I don't think it says by Cain and Eva. It doesn't say
No, it
that.
doesn't. But the question is that I thought we applied this Tsalmenu as a masculine and B'dmuto as a feminine.
Exactly.
And yet you've got both descriptions on one person's shit.
But
So how do we understand that?
Because we explained that since Salmo is a reference to Zachar and Muto is a reference to Nekeva, whenever we talk about a humanity that's Bitsalmo, Mitmuto, it's not talking about him himself, what he's representing. It means what he's made up of, where he comes from. And this is the first, meaning the Pasuk is pointing out that Shes was born of a man and a woman. He came into being, but he himself, as a masculine, he's a tzela.
Right.
But he's not, right? So that's what we mean over here, right? Right? Vayoled, and he was born, Bidmuto Kitsalmo. Shahaya me Adam v'Chava. He came from both a tzelem and a dmut. What's fascinating over there is that it's reversed. It says dmut first, and then tzelem.
Oh yeah.
Okay, v'hiktim hadmut, and it puts the dmut first. Al ki isha mazra'at tchila yoledet zachar. So there's a Gemara in Nida, right? Rashi brings it in the beginning of Tazria, Parshat Tazria, that says that in the event where the woman is mazra'at tchila, so that determines that the gender of the child, the sex of the child, is going to be a zachar. And since Shes was a male, that's indication that the initiation of the creation was on behalf of the Isha, right? It was the Isha that planted first, so to speak. Okay? V'od narchiv be'or zeh b'sha'arim b'siyata d'shmaya. We will elaborate on this in future places with the help of heaven. Okay, meaning this is a point that requires elaboration. So he's just noting why over there it says bidmuto before kitsalma, why it mentions the feminine element before the masculine element, because it's also describing or referencing the mechanics of how he ended up being a zachar is because his mother was first. Okay. This is all going according to the words of the Medrash of Reb Simlai that we looked at. Shedato, it is his opinion, She'amro, who said that the verse when it says Vayivra Elohim, who amashiniver kodem le'inyanasa adam aniska. Meaning, to understand these two verses as out of order and all their implications, this is going with Reb Simlai's approach. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, should we pause here? Because the next piece is a much bigger piece, and that's an alternative pshat.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so, okay, we'll pause here.